Well, thank you once again for receiving me in your lovely office, Mr. President. The first thing I noticed when I came in was the yellow on the walls.
Yeah,
Have you?
I haven't touched it since the Twix administration. This is the Oval Office still, where our renovations are coming.
So, have you been here at all since the election, or is this the first time?
Uh, I've been here the once or twice, but I don't really come here very often. A lot of my work is down, in the actual trenches and in helping the people of Redmont.
In the trenches, that is where? Klondike? Oak Ridge. Okay. Well, I just wanted to congratulate you again on your victory a week ago. You got more than 70% of the votes. I think that's huge. What does that mean to you?
It means a lot. I mean, I think that, heading in to the race, that obviously there were people say things, and obviously, there are a lot of them were saying that, 3 terms the first term is 10 days, like I was saying before. 3 terms is too much. I've been here for too long, blah, blah, blah. Like, I was worried it would be a closer race. And to see the, friends from now and the past and, people I've never spoken to come out and show support for Vanquish and I, like, it's awesome. I really appreciated that.
Well, yes. I mean, you've been on the server quite a while. It's your third term. Uh, to who do you campaign? New players, old players? Who?
Yeah, so I think when I was campaigning, and I think the same is true now, is that I don't really look at it as an uh all player, new player thing. It's more of a player retention thing, and I think there are things you could do for retention for both old players and new players. Um, so for example, we're redoing the spawn tutorial. I think that's really good for keeping new players onto the server, but then everything else we do keeps new and old players on the server. So I don't think there's that big of a delineation, like a lot of people say there is. I think there's new player specific legislation and new player specific policies we can pass, but I think after that, it's about retention for everyone.
But I mean, I think there is still some divide between boomers and zoomers, right? Because, for example, when I joined the server, people were like, "Oh, it's great to have another boomer coming in." Um, how do you see this, like, as a culture war, or do you see it more as a friendly divide?
I don't think it's a culture war. I think we know that I wouldn't define it as a friendly divide either. I think that DC and Redmond and our citizens, just like in the real world, we're all very cliquey. People were really excited when you came back, especially people who have been here for a long time because they know you. So it's just having people's friends back, and obviously as new players stay for longer, they make friends who tend to be older on the server as well. So I don't think it's like a divide thing. I think it's people who like are newer to the server and maybe a little less experienced, and people who are more experienced and have put themselves out there and made more friends.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, okay, that's true. But for example, you have been on the server for how many years? Do you think?
Uh, let's see. I joined late December 2020. So let's say early January 2021 is when I actually started playing. That's when I was elected to Congress the first time.
Now, yet you are still president here today. Do you think new players have the same opportunity as you had back then?
Oh, for sure. I think that, the game has gotten easier, especially with, a smaller player base and way more opportunities now than we had before. I mean, I think you remember when I first joined, and probably when you were here,
Mm-hmm.
like we had dominant parties that, and there wasn't really space for other parties. So the DRP was winning everything. I think there is parity now, and I think that there is, there is room to grow, and I think we've seen that. We saw Deadwax win the presidency. Traditionally, you probably wouldn't have won 2 years ago. We saw Derpy become president. Twix became president, beating out 2 major parties as an independent. I think that there definitely is a route for new players to make it big, and I think a big part of my administration as well is putting new players in those positions, or not new players, but less experienced and players that haven't been here for 500 years.
You were talking about older parties such as the DRP. I think the DRP really created a shift in the seriousness of the political system. How do you see that yourself?
So I think my opinion is it has shifted a lot since starting, right? Like I don't think that we to be like, like beating ourselves or like making the server not fun for us. I think fun is a very big part of the reason and should be the only reason we play on the server. But I do think that there is in like making it super fun and not being productive is the problem. Right. So like the delineation that I really liked, and I think that what we did really well with the BDP, the ICP, the Mario Party, and then now the new BDP is that while we are having fun, we're also being very productive. We're passing policies. The issue I see is that people try to replicate that and they don't do the same productive things. So then it just becomes people trolling, which I don't think is conducive to a good roleplay environment. I think there needs to be a healthy balance between having fun and being serious. So to answer your question, the way I kind of see the shift is I do regret a little bit because I do think I am, probably somewhat responsible for the shift in the culture and probably for the worse. But at the same time, that's because people haven't been able to replicate, what we've done.
So overall, do you think the shift in the culture has improved DC or worsened it?
I think there's both sides of the coin. I don't think I think the roleplay aspect of it has definitely died down. I mean, I don't think that, we're taking actual government positions as seriously and, preparing the best people to be in those positions. I think we've seen in the last couple Congresses that people really just don't know what they're doing and they don't really have a desire to learn. But then also, on the other side of it, we want to make the server fun for people as well. Like, I'm glad people are enjoying themselves.
To what extent do you think your opponent in last election was a serious candidate?
I think the two of them tried their best to run a serious campaign, but I think the downfall of their campaign was their inexperience. I don't think that, I think they ran their campaign just fine. But obviously, they brought in those inexperienced, like non-political, try to be like a little too not serious at times. Like, for example, when Zelos was doing whatever, I think that, it was a lot of self-inflicted wounds that they've caused on themselves, which is probably the reason they lost. So you're the margin they did. I think I was going to win anyway, but by that margin.
So you're talking about inappropriate things or just policy-wise?
Both. Right. I think that from a campaign perspective, I think that releasing your cabinet almost a month before the election is probably a bad idea because then you have people who change their minds and switch and drop out. And I think they had like 5 or 6 cabinet members who decided they didn't want to be part of their campaign anymore. I thought the idea where they would be like, we're going to focus on one thing every month is probably not the best idea, especially when we do have 8 departments, or I think it's 8 now, where people are, we're more than capable of multitasking. We have a great, crew assembled in our cabinet at least, and each of them have been doing a lot of good work. So I think that the way I disagree with their vision for what the presidency could be and how they wanted to run the country. In terms of the policies themselves, like they were fine. I think a lot of them could be accomplished by Congress, and as they are members of Congress, I hope to see them, put out bills and legislation and things like that, to address the issues they see, as pressing. But yeah,
that's great. So, do you wish the election was more competitive?
No, I'm glad to win the margin I did. I mean, obviously, I it's a lot of fun when you have, different people. The campaign is probably, the most fun part of DC for me, at least.
Yeah.
I love running in elections.
Your support base, they are loyal to you, correct?
Yeah, in the last election, like, honestly, like, look at that turnout. Like, I could have done anything, and I think I still would have won that election.
Anything?
I could have killed someone in Hamilton.
You could have killed someone in Hamilton, and they still fought for you.
Of course.
Oh, yes.
No. To be, I think that, it's a testament of the hard work that Vanquish and I did that we've been able to build the support. And that's why people support us.
Well, I think there's some older players coming back as well, such as Crix and perhaps Intercepticon. I don't know how active he has been lately, but I've uh, I've heard he's running for Congress again.
That's awesome. Yeah, he's running with the BDP.
How do you think elections, like the competitive of elections, will develop into the future?
I think that once we have a larger player base, I think that, and I think we have seen an upward trajectory. I think as we're playing right now, there's a decent amount of players on. Yesterday we had 40 something players on. I think that now that we're back in the summer and we have a bit more players, voting in election and participating, I think it's going to become a little bit more competitive, which I really like. There's a larger voter base to tap into and campaign to, which is obviously always a lot of fun. I think there was a point in the election between me and Yi where there were 30 people on and I knew where every single person was voting. I think having that uncertainty and having the ability to campaign to more people is always a lot of fun.
How do you see the development of new players? Do you think it's all because of the summer, or do you think there are other factors in ways we can attract more people to the server?
Yeah. I mean, I think that one, running/vote is very, very important. And the one thing I'm working on right now is I'm working with the CRB to increase the rewards for voting to incentivize players, especially new players, and everyone actually just to vote more. When our server gets moved up on server lists, more people will see it. Second, I know from the server side, they've invested a lot into marketing this summer. We brought on a new marketing manager. So being more active on social media is key. The TikTok, for example, has been pretty active in the last couple of weeks. And then third, I think that we, even before summer, we were getting a decent amount of players online, but it's a matter of keeping them on, which is what I was saying earlier with retention, how retention is probably the most important thing for us to be focusing on right now. I think players will join, but if I join the server and there's a billion things, this is a very in-depth server.
Yeah.
And there's a billion things to do, and I don't know what to,
Well, yes, that's retention when they're already on the server, but sometimes we have people who join the server. They look around for a few seconds and they think, no, this server is not for me. How do you get those players to stay?
Yeah, so right now the DOE, and it hasn't reached the DOE yet, but right now the staff side is developing the back end of this, but we're working on creating a new spawn tutorial like I mentioned before. I think right now when people join, they're super overwhelmed and there isn't really a lot to do. Or there isn't really a lot of resources for them to learn what's going on. I think making a task-oriented and quest-oriented spawn tutorial where people can get hands-on experience with different parts of the server is really key. So one of the first things they'd be doing is joining the Discord and making an account in the forums and things that you need to do in order to play the server.
But wouldn't that also be boring just to do administration and tasks and quests right away? You want to get into it.
Well, yeah. So it wouldn't just be you do this. It'd be go out and buy something, or this is how you become an entrepreneur. So that's the initial thing. And second, obviously, we have more grants and more initiatives for new players coming out as well, to increase retention and to something I'm working on with the DCT right now is a free paste for the first time they paste onto a plot. So things like that, I think, are really important as well to kind of ease the burden of people on getting, their first plot, their first car, their first whatever. So things like that are also in the works. But I'm more so talking about the second they join the server, they have the resources available to them to navigate the place and figure out what they're getting themselves into before they actually get into it.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's a great initiative, and definitely an important issue this summer. Are there any other projects you're very passionate about to achieve this summer?
Yeah, so I think that this is what I ran my campaign on, is that the roleplay in the server has really just been dying out. That's due to various things. I think one is that the city, especially the new map we moved to, it's super spread out and we're super fragmented, and that community vibe that we felt in the last map in Hamilton is just not been able to be recovered. So I want to do what I can to rebuild those communities and build back, knit those communities again. Second, I think that the role play has sort of died out because of Discord craft, and you have a lot of players who, don't really play here very often, but are still calling the shots in a lot of places through Discord. I disagree with that premise. I think that, Democracy Craft is a Minecraft server. I think we should be, playing Minecraft. So I want to move things that, what we can move to in-game. I want to move things in-game. The House and Senate have picked it up recently that things like in-game hearings were pretty dead all of last year. And up until a month ago, like, barely dead. So bringing things like that, is really just key for me. The desire is there, right? Like, I think that, especially recently, the congresses have been awesome in like pushing for more in-game events. But once schedule, like the last roadblock is scheduling. So once they have that down, I think we're in a great place.
Right. Well, the past debates like Congress, President, Senate, they have also always been on Discord, and not on the and not in game.
Yep.
Did you try to push for an in-game debate, less election, or?
We did in-game town halls. We did a lot of Q&A sessions, but I think the debate should be on Discord, just so that people can access it at any time. Because obviously, with time zones, and if there's only one debate, I think that it's really important that people are going to be able to read that at any time during the day or night before they make their vote, which is the rationale for why I prefer doing it on Discord.
Mm-hmm.
And also for Congress, I think, when you have however like 30 people running for the House, I think it's really messy when everyone's yelling at each other in the local chat. But I do think that, one-on-one debates are really important. I think VC debates are awesome. I remember last year, Azel and Bob did one that was, a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, I'm obviously open to doing in-game debates, but I don't think they should be for, the only type of debate.
All right. So, a few questions ago, you mentioned the city, and that it feels less cozy than Hamilton, like Reveal.
Yeah.
When Reveal was introduced, were you an opponent, or were you someone who wants to explore the possibility?
I definitely wanted to explore the possibility, but I think a lot of it came because, Revel was coming no matter what. I think we can all agree that. The two options were either we run on two maps, or we move everything to one map. I was promoted to moving everything to one map because of Aventura, and I didn't want to spread, the population even thinner between 2 cities and 4 towns. I thought that would, kill every town. So I pushed for option 2 or whatever that option was. But in terms of the city itself, obviously it's a beautiful city. I just don't think that it should have been, entirely released at once. I think that expanding out and building out probably would have been smarter for us to do. But what's done is done. Now we gotta adapt to it.
So do you think Reveal was a mistake? Ultimately?
No, I think it. I think it. I would do it again.
You would do it again?
I just would do it differently.
All right. Yeah. The whole Reveal and the transition is a point of contention in the relationship with you and End, because, for example, in a oath of office swearing, you didn't want to swear to End. For example, your library, you're putting a gun at his statue. Is it actually a hostile relationship, or is it just a joke?
No, we're cool. Obviously, I don't agree with everything he does, but he doesn't agree with everything I do, but that's fine. We all want what's best for the server and the country. I think that's just what it is. The gun I just thought was funny. The inauguration thing was more so me not wanting to, not so help me God, a person on a Minecraft server. I don't think
So do you think that should be changed in the oath of office, or?
If other people want to do it, they can. For me, it's just like I I don't think I've ever done it actually. I think, when I was first elected, I think I said, "So help me Jesus," but obviously I'm not going to say that now, um, for obvious reasons. Uh,
So your relationship with and Reveal and the whole thing, do you think Reveal is empty and needs more development?
I think that we need to start moving things into hubs and start creating like districts and themed like areas that build community identities. So what I mean by that is, for example, we have a lot of buildings that are surrounded by nothing. I think that when they should probably be moved over to an area where there's an open space, but there are other buildings around. So moving the city from moving like evicted plots from east to west, I think is probably the route I would go with. And moving things into a bit more central, so we have more space that's just empty, and we expand out when needed. I would rather us fill out a full area and then move out.
Yeah, right. I think that's good. Well, one of your campaign policies was also commercial hubs, and does it also include the CBD, like more CBD developments, or just more player built developments?
I want to prioritize player built developments, but I mean, obviously, if there's a demand for more like CBD type areas, I'm not opposed. I mean, we just I don't know if this was done during my administration. No, it was done during Twix's administration, but recently the DCT just added a couple more CBD plots in the new spawn train station. So, we did just expand. But yeah, if there's demand, I mean,
Yeah.
something we can definitely look into.
All right. Let's talk about something that happened this morning or evening, or I don't know, midday. Your executive order to remove Klondike. What was the decision-making process behind that?
Yeah. So I think for the longest time, I mean, even when we had a player base of like 100 people on it every any given moment, I think 4 towns is just too much, and I think a lot of people agree with that. Um, you know, even at the time, people were like, "We don't need 4 towns." Throughout, DC's history, but like, we don't need 4 towns. So I probably disagree with the town's creation in the first place, of having the 4th town. I mean, obviously, I got a lot of respect for Klondike, the town itself. I helped write the application for it, so it was the very first decision for me. But what went into my factor to remove it? One, I think, DC doesn't have the bandwidth for it. Second, I think that there's just been a general inactivity in the town. And when I say that, I mean like in all. I think, leadership for the past like 6 to 8 months has not really been very present in the town. And I think as a result, it's fallen behind. But independently, even when leadership is, somewhat around, the town isn't really being used. I mean, you look at the last CPI and there were only 3 items sold in town. I don't know how, but the quantity of those 3 items, but I think it was an iron ingot, a cooked chicken, and like a potion. Like the town is not being used. So what I would rather do is I would rather, use that space and then develop it into a national park or something else, and allocate our resources where we have people who want to run in town elections to other towns, and move the residents to other towns if they exist.
So the decision to sunset Klondike was really a controversial decision. How do you deal with controversy?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think that, obviously it wasn't a very easy decision to make. Like I was before, it's I've been involved with the town for a very long time. I'm a mayor myself, so I understand what it is. But I earlier on in my DC career, in my Redmond career, sorry, trying to please everyone, trying to make everyone happy, and then I sort of realized that no matter what I do, someone's going to be upset. No, and I know even now, even after Klondike, right? Like I'm connected well. I hear through a grapevine there are people talking, and people obviously very upset, saying some outlandish things about me, and that's it's a big deal. It's not a big deal, right? Like I think at the end of the day, people are going to get upset. People are going to overreact. People are going to dramatize things. And for me, it used to bother me, and it still bothers me a little bit sometimes, seeing like close friends of mine, from coming out and being like, "Oh, I think he's a terrible person," and this blah 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 blah. I'm like, first of all, no, I'm not, and I know that. But But then I remember that, these are probably just kids who are, lonely and afraid in the real world and they need a place to, vent. And if, hating on me over a Minecraft town is their escape from the real world and makes them feel better about themselves, like, it is what it is, right? Like I'm cool with it.
Well, I mean, like, so you don't listen to the opinion of the people at all, or just not the...
No. I don't take it personally. I mean, I think that, controversy is part of the job. And I think that not everyone's going to agree with everything you do. But so long as I know that I'm doing the right thing, and I do think that, taking emotions out of it, removing a town was the right thing, I think that's going to be guiding my presidency.
Well, I mean...
just doing the right thing.
I mean, you didn't announce this in your presidential campaign. I mean, isn't it sort of disingenuous to do this so early on in your administration? You could have announced this in your election, and I think it would make it will be a more democratic decision, because then if people voted for you, they would be in favor of that, and now the people really don't have a say.
I did bring this up, actually, and in two of my town halls, people asked on what I thought. Obviously, it wasn't in my campaign policy, whatever. It wasn't in there, but people asked what my stance was on the towns, and it's always been this: is that we need to be boosting activity within towns, and us having 4 towns spreads the player base thin between the 4, and I believe that removing 1 town is the best way to do so. And I also promise that increasing the political importance of towns is something I really want to do. And that's adding elections. That's, adding elections to democratizing towns will obviously inherently increase the political importance of them. So it becomes really hard to remove a town when they have elections, and, it becomes a lot messier. So instead of waiting, later, a month, 2 months, 3 months, however long, it was a lot easier to just rip the Band-Aid off now than, start the structural change early, so that, if there are any hiccups down the road, we can fix them.
So your immediate thought about removing a town was Klondike. You didn't consider removing different towns?
Oh, no. So I consulted with a lot of people. Obviously, we had to open my vice president, the DOS, a lot of my own personal trusted advisors, and even in general, on the campaign trip, people were like, it should be Klondike or it should be Oak Ridge. I've been looking at, I have access to the progress. I've spoken to the previous and current DOS secretary, and I've been seeing through my eyes, right? Like, Oak Ridge has been, stepping it up. Like, the town looks a lot better than it did 6 to 8 months ago.
Fine.
Whereas Klondike hasn't made a ton of progress. That's not a knock on, the current mayor or the previous mayor. But it just, the town just isn't performing, and it's my job to make sure they are.
I think Klondike had a lot of potential with industry. I think there could be a major economic area, whereas Aventura just had fishing. I mean, who fishes in Aventura?
Sure. And I think that it's a testament, right? You saw that Klondike or Aventura is just a fishing town, but is a big commercial hub, whereas Klondike has had the potential for... The town has existed almost 2 years now. At what point are we, beyond being 2 years away from being 2 years away, right? Like...
Mm-hmm. Well, some people might say that Aventura is just a good name with great branding. How would you respond to that? Or do you think it actually has economic potential?
I mean, I think the CPI speaks for itself. So you see that all the economic indicators would say that Aventura, businesses are opening and doing well in Aventura. And also, I think that, through our business initiatives, we're offering almost $23,000, and we're subsidizing. I think that, the branding is great. I agree. And I think, but if you look at any business ever, you need good branding to do well.
Well, you also spend a lot of time on branding. In your presidential campaign, one of the major criticisms against you was that you were just a popular candidate, that you didn't get elected on merits. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, that's always a funny question because like there obviously there's nothing I can do about my popularity, and I am popular because I do the work. And I think that, even the people that love me, the people that hate me, the people are, in the group chats right now listening to this, being like, "Oh, thank you, you're at Klondike." Like, like everyone can acknowledge that. Like, when I put my head down, I'm working. Like I think that, I put in like Vanquish and I and our general campaign team did a ton of work, and I think that we earned our win with or without, any previous name recognition. I didn't run on being a previous president. Most of what my campaign was based off of in the town halls, like even when I was debating with my opponents, like we were like, all right, fine, like let's look at things just from after my administration. Like after my administration, I still won a Congress seat twice, and I was DPA secretary for almost 6 months. Like I've still accomplished a lot independent of, being president before, and I've excelled in every job I've done.
All right. Let's talk. So let's talk some more about the other part of your executive order, the mayor elections. You have been the mayor of Aventura since its beginning, right? Maybe with a brief period where you
3 months. I let Muffins run it.
All right. How does it feel to have an election now, and why has it taken so long?
How does it feel to have an election now? I mean, it's bittersweet, obviously. I'm not as a mayor, obviously I don't want an election, right? I would rather not focus on the politics of it, and I would rather, sit back and work on the town itself. But objectively speaking, every town has sort of turned into a mini dictator. And, it's not very democratic for democracy crowd. So, emotions aside, I think it's the right move to make.
So the reason for the elections is mainly just because to make it more democratic. There isn't an argument for better engagement.
Obviously we need more. Having more electable seats is obviously great for people, especially when you look at things like Congress and then the presidency. Like people can get their experience from towns, and people have great ideas for some of these towns, and if we want to open it up and see what we could do there.
So, are you running for mayor again if the position is up for election?
Probably.
Probably is.
Yeah, right. Probably. Yeah.
So you just talked about the importance of having more elected positions, and I think there's a bill in Congress right now to have less electable positions, to shrink the House, to shrink Congress.
I would not sign that bill if it came to my desk.
You wouldn't sign the bill?
No, I would not. And the reason for that is that I think we have, we can support 11 members of the House. And I think that the big issue is that the people that are running, one, aren't, prepared to run. They don't have the experience, which I hope, town elections will help solve. And two, we don't have parties that are, seriously training their candidates to run for House. So I think that, as we engage with more role play, and as we boost the political role play of the server, I think more players will take the House seriously and will, see better results and better houses of representatives. There needs to be a culture shift. I don't think it's a numbers problem.
So a culture shift. Well, in your inauguration speech, you mentioned the importance of having a sustainable remnant way beyond your administration. Do you think a culture shift is sustainable? Like,
absolutely.
Wouldn't it change back?
Why would it?
Because, it has in the past, because there were more competent representatives, I think, in certain congresses than now. So what is the reason for that, do you think?
Well, sure. I mean, I think that, again, and I do put a lot of this blame on myself, is when, you started seeing a lot more of these less serious parties pop up. That sort of fractured that initial culture that we had. And from there, it's kind of, spiraled a little bit. And now we're kind of suffering the end of that, or have been. and now it's sort of just repairing it and sort of moving back in the, nudging it back into a little bit more of the serious direction and the direction we need to be going in right now.
All right. Well, that's politics within DC.
Yeah.
How do you see politics outside DC, like international politics? What is your vision for international relations?
Yeah, I want to I think that I don't know what's going on in Stratham. First, I have no idea what's going on over there in terms of what they're doing with their government and 7 ministers and whatever is going on. Once they get their things sorted, obviously, I've reached out to everyone, but obviously I'd like to do a couple of one-on-one events with a couple of other nations. Last year before the Stratham dissolved its government, we had a War Games event planned where we would do a series of PvP games with the members of Stratham and, their player base, which I thought would have been a lot of fun. But, things like that is sort of my goal with board relations. I don't really see too big of a scope outside of bilateral and multilateral events.
Yeah. Do you also wish there was more connection between the player bases? Like, do you wish someone could go from DC to BC to the other servers with for example the same money? Do you think there should be like exchange rates or anything, or do you think DC has to stay unique?
I personally think that I like the way where you have to grind on each server to make it somewhere. But if a private company, and I was talking to Leo about this the other day, my DOC secretary, that if a private company wants to, create a foreign exchange, like we'll do what we can. I think that it's not the worst idea in the world, but I don't think that it should be the government that spearheads that. I'd like the private sector to do it instead.
So, for example, if you would have that, and there would be more players shifting from one server to the other, how do you think DC is unique from the other servers?
I think that we have more players.
Just more players?
And there's no disrespect to, Harlan or Stratham or even Vindex. I have them all on my server list, and there are times where, we have more players online with all of them combined. Like, there are times where I see a couple that have 0 players on at any given moment. Right, and again, no disrespect to them, but I think that DC probably has, the thing that makes us unique is that we have the most in-depth community, or the most in-depth server itself in terms of features, and then we also have the most dedicated player base. So I think that's what makes us the most unique out of the 4 UN servers. You see a lot of members of former members of DC making names for themselves on other servers as well. I think that you have or players that have cycled through DC at one point or another.
So
we obviously have Westray, who's representing Harlan, but he was obviously president over here twice. And you have Sumo, who was president of BC for a while, Stratham for a while, and he was a member of Congress over here. And David, who was president on Vindex, was a senator on here. So I think you have I think what's really cool is that you have people that's cycling through different servers, but I think that this is the place. This is why I love playing on DC and being in Redmont more than any other place than Rolling was.
I think DC is also very focused on democracy. It's in its name, and government. Whereas BC is more focused on business. Do you think Democracy Craft should also focus more on business?
I think that we have invested a lot into business and the economy and things like that. I think these features do exist, and I think that the powers that be are very receptive, that when there are economic-based ideas and business-based ideas that, a lot of these features do get implemented. I think that from a government side, obviously I think that it'll vary from government to government on how people view economics, but, my administration is, more than happy to do work in that space. And I think that if you look at the changelog in the Congress or in the Cabinet Discord, Leo has been putting in that work this last week.
All right. So putting in the work, you mean to promote different kind of businesses, or how do you mean?
Yeah, or even just like stimulate the business, like the business sector, right? I mean, I think that, yeah, like I think making it easier for people to start businesses, make people operate businesses. I think all of that is just very important and a prerequisite to having a thriving business scene.
All right, all right. Well, you were talking about having that it's important to make it easier for people to start businesses.
Yeah.
However, I think at Spawn mainly, there are like 3, 4, 5 shops which are very popular, mainly because they're at Spawn. It's the first shop people go to. Is that fair to other players who might not have the same position?
Yeah. I mean, I think that people are paying that price though, right? Like the rent there is pretty high. I mean, that's for a reason. But even then, I think that, once you play on the server for a while, you see people advertising their shop locations. Like, I think, and I think that empirically, people don't shop by Spawn the most. You look at Bernicia's, for example.
But she has stores, right?
Yeah, but a bulk of her business is done in her, like, mega store.
All right.
Like you have Blind Blocks, who owns Abbott's, who does most of his sales at C0690 of Versace, my business. I do most of my business at Aventura. My Spawn shop doesn't do that much.
Okay. So a lot of spawns, a lot of teleports. I think people teleport everywhere they want, but they don't really travel through the city. So, do you think it's important that people travel to the city, or should it just go immediately to where they want?
I mean, hopefully we have like a hybrid of the two, right? I mean, I have nothing against running /spawn-Aventura instead of, walking there. But I mean, I would like people to use public transportation. I think that, until we, ban elytras, which I'm not necessarily for or against, I think that, public transportation won't be used as much. Or, this cars plugin that's coming out soon, I hope that people that use cars.
I mean, what's the point of cars if you can just set a home or go to Spawn wherever you want? You don't have to travel. You don't have to look at the city. You just go from A to B. Fun in that.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think a lot of players who, aren't donators, then we have 2 homes to reset. So I think the vast majority of players, will have to navigate around. But even then, I think, for roleplay purposes, it's cool to have a car. I definitely I would use a car if, the models that I've seen are going to come out.
All right. Let's also talk about another issue or thing of contention. We also talked about this earlier, but some plots in the city are empty. Now, one proposed solution to that problem is to end plot limitations. What is your view about that?
So I put out, actually, I'm glad you asked. I put out a bill with the Revel Builders Workers Union, whatever that group is that End has, and CJ and the DCT, and we reached a compromise. So we are raising the limit from 20 to 50 for commercial plots, and increasing taxes at a rate where, if you're going to own a bunch of plots, you're going to be paying the price for it. So my stance is that I'm okay with people owning more plots if, they can afford it.
Right. So it's about also having people pay their fair amount of taxes then.
Exactly.
Do you think people are getting taxed enough? Do you think the government has enough money?
I think that yes and no. I think that, obviously people log in and the balance tax is fairly high, but at the same time, like, with the amount the government is spending, I think that, there might be a world in which we need to raise taxes. And I think that's what this, raising the plot limitation might do, right? When people own more plots, they can pay more taxes, and hopefully that just offsets the amount that we need. But as of right now, I don't have any intention on increasing taxes.
All right. Well, there are also different government initiatives to raise money. For example, the featured business slots. I think they rigged in a fair amount of money for the government.
Yeah, I think that's about $45,000 to $50,000, which is awesome.
Yeah. How do you see the development of more auctions and other means of raising money for the government other than taxes.
Yeah, and then I love doing those things. I think you know that from my time in Aventura is that I'm a big believer in auctions. So I think auctioning off things like that is always going to be, you know, a good thing to do instead of offering a flat price for a lot of things. I think it was the last administration or 2 administrations ago where they introduced auctions for evicted plots. And I think that's a great idea.
So, renting from the government, such as the shops at the CBD, those are flat fees, like a monthly flat fee. However, sometimes you see players privately auctioning off their rights to rent. Do you think that the government should do something similar to the rent plots?
No. I think that if people did find an open plot issue, we'll just take it.
No, but I mean, like, for example, you have 2 shops at Spawn. If those rights to rent were auctioned off monthly by the government, you wouldn't. I don't think you would have both, or even if you would have both, all the people would have an opportunity to compete as Spawn.
I think it'd be the same people buy before again. And also, it's a hassle to take down your store and set it up. If I, for example, I have CBD 001 and I win 1 month, and then I win 008 another month, I have to tear down the store and put it up somewhere else for a month. I think these logistically be very feasible.
I mean, you could do longer periods of time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that it's easier to just make it first come first serve. I think that's probably more fair and more equitable as well. Because it doesn't matter how rich you are. If you get to a plot first, you get to the plot first.
When you first joined the server, I think you joined, you hit the ground running, right?
Yeah.
So do you think that the advantage you had at the beginning of your career really helped you in that way to become so popular?
I mean, I don't think it helped me any different than it helped someone else, right? I don't think it's difficult for, you look at someone like Crity now, right? He's the DOH secretary. He didn't join very long ago. But because, he sits down, he puts in the work, he's moved up in the world, like he's moved from the political landscape because, he does the work. Like, I don't think that people should just be handed positions, which is another issue I have with the new player versus old player. I think it's, it should be an issue, people who work hard and people who like know what they're doing versus people who don't. And I don't think you have to be an old player to know what you're doing.
But
like Nanny, for example, he just joined server a couple months ago.
Who?
Nanny Cole is my new press advisor. He's currently representative. He's doing a great job.
Well, wouldn't you say that new players are generally less competent than old players?
I mean, maybe. Like I wouldn't say that. I think that there are a ton of new players and who do really well. Obviously, it takes them a while there is definitely a learning curve on learning how to use the server, but the resources are all there. My goal for this administration is to make those resources easier to get so more players can gift that or that learning curve process becomes easier on them.
All right. But, also some players who are really committed to the server, they get banned or because they're overly committed to politics, or they get banned from toxicity, such as Dusty, the Donaticus, Gallifans was also banned. Do you think these players should be banned, or do you think they should be stayed on, even though they might be less, even though they fit in less with the Milkcrack community picture?
Am I answering this as a staff member, or am I answering this as like a...
You're answering this in any way you want to.
Okay.
As a person.
As a president, I think it's a lot of fun when we have, a diverse group of politicians. I'll leave it at that. And as a staff member, if someone's breaking the rules, they probably shouldn't be here.
So, I mean, so you're a president and you're a staff member.
Yeah.
Do you think that helps in making more change to have the government and staff closely linked?
My first administration, I was like just joining. I was a T mod my first administration. Or my first administration, I wasn't a staff member, the 10-day one. The second one, I was a T mod my entire way. This one, fortunately, I'm a senior admin. Which is crazy to think about that I'm putting into like, making it linear, that it's taken me over a year to become a senior admin. But I think that it's easier in a sense that I am already familiar with, like I communicate with Enderby, Tech, and Nacho and all of them like consistently anyway. But I was doing that before I was on the staff team. So maybe not for me specifically. I don't know if there's a comparative advantage, but I think that, because like I also don't know how to use a console or make server-side changes. So it's easy for me to like reach these people, but it wasn't very hard to begin with because, in the cabinet Discord, we have a channel that's just the president, vice president, the server leadership.
Oh,
so they're not hard to reach. But to actually make change, I mean, it's no different than, how it's a regular player versus a staff member.
All right. I have another question. If you could bring back any person from DC history, who would you choose?
There's not just one person. There's so many people.
Name one.
Nikki. I think Nikki is the second best politician in DC history.
Little Lildigivert.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Super confident, super, committed to the role play. Incredibly smart. Not afraid to, speak out when she sees something that's wrong. Not afraid to do the work herself. Very good at collaborating. Like Nikki is who I think is the second best politician in DC history. That's my hot take of the night.
All right. Lildigivert was also known for her association with Nicki Minaj, of course, and you are known for your association with different rappers. One of the main things you also got critique about when you were in Congress is putting rap lyric in bills. How do you think about that?
I mean, I put a rap lyric in, or the rap verse in this executive order about towns. I mean, so for me, right, I think the perfect balance, and what I've always preached is that it's okay to have fun as long as it's not taking away from the productivity, right? Like, I will never just like rap in a bill just to rap in a bill, or like, put a rap in the executive order just to do it. Like, there's always like something like very serious and very substantive, and then like the rap is hidden under the spoiler. So like it's like my little signature. I don't know. It's just fun. I enjoy it. It's a promise I made when I first ran in the House in January of 2021, and that's a promise I intend to keep.
All right. Well, that's something that's less serious, which is put in a bill, but it doesn't affect laws. Sometimes you also see bills that do affect laws and that are kind of a joke. Maybe bills proposed by FTG WAP, for example. What is your opinion about those people and those bills?
FTG is a funny character. I think that, my opinion of those bills that they probably shouldn't have, those people probably shouldn't have made it to Congress to begin with.
So do you think they should get removed?
Yeah. I think if you put out a bill like that, obviously I think you should be removed. Like, I think there's a time and place for making jokes. I don't think that, a bill in Congress is the place to do it. Like, obviously I think there's a space to make it your own. There's a space to be creative and have some fun. But, that's not, you got to have some serious, you got to have some, some substance in there, right?
Yeah. All right. Your experience as president, what is your leadership style, right? Like,
So I am very open to delegating work. I think that, I don't need to be micromanaging every department. Um, but I also have a very specific vision that I want them to accomplish. So it's more so I'll give them a goal and I'll be like, accomplish it however you feel like is best. And there's been a decent amount of criticism of, people being, too overbearing on departments or too less overbearing on departments. I'm very much on the camp of trust your cabinet. They know what they're doing, and I'm really proud of the team we built. I think we're gonna do great.
That's great. Well, I think have also been presidents who have got elected to president and then became inactive. Your last term was really active, and I think you're committed to being active now again, right?
Yeah.
How do you ensure you stay active, and what do you think the difference is between you and those previous presidents?
How do I ensure I'm staying active? Playing the game, I think, is the best and the easiest way to stay active. Keeping things. I don't know. It's not really a thing I think about and how I'm planning on staying active. I kind of just do it. I'm still having fun. So when the server stops being fun for me, that's when I move away. I take a little break and then I come back.
All right.
And that's always been the cycle.
Well, I think that's really great. I think I hope you're gonna be a very active president with great policies. I guess there's nothing to do but wait. I think
the haters fuel me too. So you know what? I'm fully juiced up.
We'll see about your presidential administration. I think that's about all the time we have. I think it has been a lovely interview, and I thank you for your time.
Sir.
One final question. I've talked about if you could bring back one person. Now let me talk about if you could get rid of one person. Who would you choose?
Pattern's already gone. So let me think of.
Wait, who is gone?
Nothing. That's not important. I think that the person who I would most want gone is already gone.
Well, now I'm just very curious about who you're talking about.
Well, maybe the folks can try guessing in politics when they listen to this. I wouldn't want anyone gone. I would want all of the evil of the server, and I want anyone who hates Red Bond to leave. The terrorists, the thugs, the enemies.
They should leave.
Cricks. What?